Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise today in support of my amendment to H.R. 1, the For the People Act. H.R. 1 is bold, transformative legislation which seeks to restore the people's faith that government works for the public interest, not special interest. We were sent to Washington with a sacred task to do everything in our power to reinstate Americans' hope and faith in our democracy. My amendment to H.R. 1 strikes at one of the fundamental goals of this legislation by ensuring that those who have a stake in our democracy will also have a say in our democracy. By lowering the voting age from 18 to 16 years of age, my amendment will allow young people to have a say in our federal elections, to help shape and inform the policies that will set the course for the future. From gun violence to climate change, our young people are organizing, mobilizing, and calling us to action. They're at the forefront of social and legislative movements and have earned inclusion in our democracy. Beginning at the age of 16, young people are contributing to both the labor force, their local economies, by paying income taxes, and yet they are deprived of the opportunity to exercise their right to vote. In this country, we affirm that when a person walks into the voting booth and pulls that lever, there is no meritocracy or hierarchy. The booth is the equalizer. Despite many reasons in our lives growing up, for my family to feel invisible and small, my mother reminded me as a super voter each election day that on this day we were powerful. I believed her then, and I still do. When we step into that voting booth, we bring the totality of our lived experiences. The vote we cast absorbs and honors it all. Some have questioned the maturity of our youth. I don't. A 16-year-old in 2019 possesses a wisdom and maturity that comes from 2019 challenges, hardships, and threats. A 16-year-old will bring with them the 2019 fears that their father's insulin will run out before the next paycheck. A 17-year-old will bring with them the 2019 hopes to be the first in their family to earn a college degree. A 16-year-old will bring with them the 2019 lessons they learned picking up shifts, waiting tables to support their family while their mother was deployed. A 17-year-old will bring with them the 2019 solemn vow to honor the lives of their classmates stolen by a gunman. And now is the time for us to demonstrate 2019 courage that matches the challenges of the modern-day 16 and 17-year-old. I would like to thank my colleagues, Representatives Mang and Schakowsky, for their leadership on this issue and for co-sponsoring my amendment, the Rules Committee under the leadership of Chairman McGovern for bringing my amendment to the House floor for consideration. And I also wish to thank my staff, Aisa and Lanice specifically. I respectfully request my colleagues to support this amendment. And with that, I would like to yield 2 minutes to the gentle lady from New York.
The gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Representative Presley, for yielding your time. I strongly agree with my friend from Massachusetts. I thank her for sponsoring this important amendment and am proud to co-sponsor it with her. It addresses a crucial and often ignored issue that I have been fighting to raise awareness of during my time in Congress. I have met with students across the state of New York and across the country and am incredibly impressed with their drive and passion directed at the democratic process. Across the country, these students are getting involved. They are marching. They are advocating for their generation's future, and they are asserting their position in our society. This is why I'm proud to have introduced a constitutional amendment in the 115th and the 116th Congress to lower the voting age to 16 for federal, state, and local elections. The amendment in front of us today gives 16-year-olds the right to vote in federal elections. In localities that have already granted 16-year-olds the right to vote, we have seen an increase in voter participation and better debate. Madam Chair, 16-year-olds participate in our democracy already. They are legally permitted to work, they pay federal taxes on their income, and can even be tried as adults in court. It is only just that they are given the right to vote. Thank you, Representative Presley, for championing this cause. I know this fight will continue. I urge my colleagues to support the amendment, and I yield the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from Massachusetts reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition? The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Madam Speaker, may I inquire how much time I have left?
The gentleman has 3 minutes remaining.
I'd like to yield 1 minute to my good friend from Tennessee, Mr. Green.
The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just want to share a thought on this. It's interesting that recently we just raised the alcohol purchasing age to 21. We don't allow a 16-year-old to buy a beer, and the decision making is because of their ability to reason at that age. That's why we moved their ability to buy a simple beer to age 21. And now the other side wants to grant a 16-year-old the ability to decide the future of the country. I think this is foolish. I yield.
I'd like to rise and claim time in opposition to this amendment.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and also thank you to my new colleague, Ms. Presley, for participating in the legislative process. This is why we're here. We're here to debate issues, whether we agree or disagree. That's what this institution's all about. And it's great to see new members be active on very important issues. I have to say, I think there might be a constitutional issue with this amendment. The last time we lowered the voting, it seemed wrong back then that kids that were eligible for the draft, through no fault of their own, through no choice of their own, they were in country. So being 1 year old at the time, I don't really remember that debate, but I can tell you it was the right thing to do. However, for constitutional reasons, and also I'm of the opinion that we shouldn't arbitrarily lower the voting age just because right now I believe Democrats think they'll gain more votes. H.R. 1's bad enough because I believe it will institutionalize a Democrat majority here in this House of Representatives. But to be so brash and possibly unconstitutional to decide to try and lower the voting age only for political reasons is something that I don't think this institution should be doing. I have two 18-year-old boys who got to cast their first vote this year. There was some thought before Election Day I didn't know if I'd get their votes. But since then, they've told me they have voted for me, and in a close race like mine, it made a difference. But this policy is not well thought of. It's not constitutional, and it should not be part of this bill. And I'm going to urge a no vote. So with that, I'll reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Illinois reserves. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Well, we respectfully disagree with one another, and I too appreciate the opportunity to engage in the civil discourse with you. The data supports the fact that by extending the table of democracy, given what we've learned in Maryland, that in fact we have seen a more robust voter participation by those 16 and 17-year-olds than those over the age of 18. I think that we should be cultivating that relationship with young people and their government and their participation as early as possible. And although a constitutional amendment is one approach, I do think that we have a mandate from this electorate as a Congress to be bold, and this is the opportunity to do exactly that. And we should be acting. And there's nothing spontaneous about this. There have been advocates who have been organizing in communities for decades on this very issue, and of course colleagues in this very House.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Is there no more time?
The Democratic signed it. No more
Okay.
time.
It's a great debate to have. The problem we have here in this country, many 16-year-olds are still, all 16-year-olds are still legally minors. They can't be tried as adults in the court of law unless under special circumstances. The last time the voting age was lowered. In some states, 16-year-olds can't even drive their car alone. They can't take out a loan. They can't take out a mortgage. They can't open a credit card. And they can't even run for the offices that we would be asking them to be allowed to vote for. This is an amendment that has political reasons behind it. It's a reason that I believe the Democrats are pushing it. It's because they believe they will be able to increase the number of Democrat votes that are put forth in the next election. This institution should not be used for that. This bill is political enough. This bill as a whole is nothing more than a charade to make permanent the Democratic majority that just came into existence just a few months ago. And that's why I believe H.R. 1 is a bill that should be voted against. Please vote no on H.R. 1, and please vote no on this amendment for the reasons that I put forth. But again, thank you to my colleague from Massachusetts, my colleague from New York, for being here and participating in this process.